Welcome to Midland, Texas.
It's not beautiful. In fact, it's pretty dang ugly. It's dusty, hot, tough, very beige, and has a weird vibe. It's not a vacation destination, but there is no denying that Midland is powerful. We figured we can't have a show about Texas without covering the giant that is Midland. So we've headed out west to hit up the Roseland Oil and Gas Convention and talk to some folks in the industry and get a better understanding of life in Midland. If you've lived in Texas, or even if you've seen Landman or heard Trump say, "Drill, baby, drill," you've heard of Midland. It's the biggest source of oil in the U.S. by far. Nowhere else even comes close. The Permian Basin is responsible for about 46% of all the oil in the U.S. Not only is it the largest oil field in the U.S., but it's the largest in the whole world. As we like to say, everything is bigger in Texas. Now, I understand the basics of the oil industry, kind of, but I don't really spend much time in my day thinking about the details of how the gas gets to the pump. So, let's nail down some basics here at the Petroleum Museum before we go talk to the professionals. The Petroleum Museum is a pretty cool spot with interactive educational displays and time capsules of oil throughout the decades. If you have to go to Midland, we recommend stopping in and having a look around. You might learn something. You also might leave asking, was that propaganda by the oil industry? To which the answer is probably, yeah. When you're a $4.3 trillion sector, you can do whatever you want. Now, if you want to know all about what oil is and how it's refined, or any of the real technical details, I'm sure there are 100 scientists and engineers with YouTube videos explaining it far better than we could. This episode is more of an exploration of Midland, the business, and the people behind it. To break the industry part of the oil and gas industry down easy, there are three key segments. Upstream, which is where companies explore, locate, and drill wells. Midstream, which is the transportation between wells and refineries. And downstream, which refers to companies who refine the oil and those who sell the finished product. In Midland, most of what you'll see is the upstream. Around here, there are roughly 27,540 operating wells, so you're bound to see quite a few. The upstream is also the most costly part of the oil business. First, you have to find the oil, which means you have to hire geologists and conduct research. Then you have to test it and make sure you're right before spending millions on drilling. Oh, and you have to secure the land rights and all the permits and then build the rig to drill. Then install the well and hire all the workers and hope that there are no hiccups or injuries, and maintain the well and repair it for breaks, and you see why it's the most expensive part. But that's the name of the game in the industry: high risk, high reward. There are currently 41 oil extraction companies operating in Midland alone, with some 30,000 plus workers. So obviously the model works once you put in the years of elbow grease and funding. This is also what the hit Paramount show Landman is centered all around. The midstream, the transportation sector, is mostly done right under your feet. There are pipelines all over Texas that take the crude oil from the Permian Basin to wherever it needs to go. The highest capacity refinery in the U.S. is, no surprise, also in Texas, Texas City, to be exact, down in Galveston Bay, just south of Houston. It's able to refine about 631,000 barrels per day. Phew. That's why you don't mess with Texas. But that's for another episode. This one's about Midland, not H-Town. Barrel is another common key word you hear a lot in the oil industry. 1 barrel of oil contains 42 gallons. But the way you probably hear it talked about the most is that price per barrel. The price is determined by the age-old business principle of supply and demand, but on a massive scale. And here's where OPEC, or the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, comes in. We can't dive into it all here, but basically what you need to know is that OPEC regulates the supply by controlling how much oil is available to consumers and sets quotas and production levels for individual countries. There is a lot that comes into play when setting the price per barrel. And there isn't typically just one reason for why it goes up or why it goes down. But here's the rub. Too expensive is bad, and so is too cheap. You need oil and gas companies to make money without shaking out your pockets. Okay, I think we have the bare basics down. Let's head to the convention center.
How long have you been doing this?
14 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know from what you've told me previously, in being in the business, you started to notice there were some gaps in how people were servicing certain parts of the business, and that's really kind of where you came up.
Yeah.
With and you're a veteran-owned business, by the way. I always want to bring that up. That you're an Army vet.
Yes, sir.
And so that's a very important part of your business that you and Stacy run.
You know, personnel with big corporations, how people were treated. You know, because all in all of us guys are away from our families for extended periods of time.
Yeah.
So we just felt like we could accommodate that a little bit better.
We've been in business for about 3 years now. And yeah, Art started working on rigs in '99 when he was a young man.
Yeah.
And then he stopped, and then he did some other things. And then we met 16 years ago, and he got into the Army. He was in the Army. He's a disabled vet. He got out and got back into the oil field. He started in some other things and then just worked his way up. He was gone away from home like 45 days at a time, you know, from his kids and wife. So we just made sure, you know, we were always on the phone. And then when he was home for those 7 days, we really treasured that time. And that's what the oil field is like too. It was a lot like the military, you know, when he was on deployments. It was shorter stints, but, you know, more consistent.
Yeah.
So with us, we wanted to start our own company because we understand, like, you know, personnel people are the backbone of your company, and you want to treat them like you know what they're going through when they're, you know, away from their families.
That's the key part of our business. Not only maintaining equipment and doing a good job for the leases, but really accommodating people that are good integrity, good workers, and family-oriented people.
Family-oriented people, and even with our clients as well. We like making sure that for our clients, we are providing them with, you know, top-rated, you know, safety geared operators, and that our operators are doing everything they can, you know, from safety all the way to make sure all the wells flow smoothly and efficiently, and they're treated well. So they're excited and they're happy to go out to work because we're kind of like an extended family to them. And that's really where we come in, and because he started at the very bottom, you know, and we saw the way we were treated, you know, and the hard work he put in and how much he was swinging the hammer, and he still does. We know what our guys are going through on a daily basis, working hard in the field and, you know, taking care of our clients and make sure, you know, we can expand in the industry.
It's a great position to take, because in an industry where it's almost dehumanized how they use people all the time. Some of these companies where it's like everybody's a number. They don't really care if you, I mean, you know, some of these big corporations, they don't care.
No,
they don't care if you live or die or whatever. Right. But you guys are able to bring a personal touch in, which raises the quality of work.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
How do you guys meet new clients, and how do you get them to choose you over somebody else?
Right now, it's really word of mouth, and just Arthur has made a name, you know, for himself in his work ethic, and all of his operators, a lot of them has been working with him for many years, and they know how him and his, you know, team of operators work, and really hard work. Really, like literally swinging.
You just got to give it time to spread. You know, it's when you're new, you just gotta stay on the grind, stay in people's faces, and use other contacts from people you're already working for, and they direct you. You know, they directed us a couple of places. You know, different lease companies that we're working for too because of that.
Yeah. So it's almost like a flashback to how business used to be.
Absolutely.
Where, you know, who you are and what you do matters.
It's a space and time that hasn't really been touched as far as finding work, how you operate, and, you know, just every day-to-day business.
So how excited are you guys about the kind of drill baby drill portion that's going on? Because your business is three or 4 years old, right? So this is, as Nelson, this is your first time to kind of get into a season like this, right?
Yes.
Where it's going to be kind of like, we're expecting it to be
Yeah.
you know, pretty
An
aggressive.
uptick
Yeah.
and morale booster.
Yeah. So, and so, you know, how excited are you guys? And when you're looking at it, what are you anticipating happening over the next couple of years?
You know, we're excited. I'm anticipating the steadiness, you know, the longevity, not so much the spikes
Yeah.
that you see, you know, beforehand, because we've all been through the,
Ups
you know,
and
2010, the ups and downs, highs and lows. And I like the longevity, just the steadiness,
Okay.
the security of the work.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what we're excited.
So you got a good growth pattern. But so Landman is a big topic for people. It's a hot topic because it's like one of the #1 shows out there, and it's the setting of that show is here, you know, and it's about the oil business. You guys have watched the show,
Yeah.
some of it at least, right?
Yeah, and we've lived in Midland.
Yeah. So yeah, y'all lived out here for a long time.
Kids were part of the community. Yeah. No,
So how, like when you look at that show, because for some people that's their only point of reference with what we're talking about,
Yeah.
right? Like you say oil rig, and they only picture this one thing.
Yeah.
They don't, and there's all this different equipment. It's like we're gonna walk around. There's all this stuff going on that
Yeah.
takes place out here. But how much of that is like accurate? How much of it is BS? You know, and what are your thoughts on like how they're depicting kind of what's
Yeah.
going on out here?
I feel like a lot of it's pretty spot on far as location, guys working and everything. Deaths happen every day, and you know that's all super true.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the extracurricular things that go on the show are probably pre-2010. You know,
Okay.
it's not so Wild West now because you have
Yeah.
so much.
with the cartel.
So much,
that was like-
Yeah.
so much compliance stuff. You know, you're not really into that a whole lot. Now they do see a little bit of the cartel incidents down south. You know,
Yeah.
you'll always see it. Now, it's not violent. It might just be crossing through, or you know,
Using whatever.
yeah, through land.
What about the crime stuff? Like, because there's
There's a lot of theft.
yeah,
Like,
I was wondering, there's some very expensive stuff out here.
So
right?
Yeah.
yesterday,
Tools.
one of our employees was just parked at Cavender's, and someone tried to steal his toolbox. Right, he was in Cavender's for 30 minutes in broad daylight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are stealing, you know, oil.
Yeah, that's still going on.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any stopping that.
Looking at, you know, what you're going to be doing over the next couple of years, what are you hoping happens with your company, like from a growth standpoint?
Expand with yards, own a lot more equipment, ramp up personnel, and really spread throughout Texas, you know, from south to the Permian, and just kind of be anywhere and everywhere we can be, and expand yards, expand equipment,
Yeah, just double up on personnel,
Expand.
equipment,
operators.
equipment yards.
Yeah.
That's what we're looking forward to. We're headed that way. So
One of the questions too is, you know, you see oil prices go up and down and all that kind of stuff, depending on what's going on with this business or things around the world. How does the price per gallon or per barrel impact what you guys are doing or how things are working?
A lot. So your price per barrel, like, you know, in the early, you know, 80s, and you know that the barrels were like 148, you know, per barrel.
During the heyday. Yeah.
And you know, companies were allowed to just throw money around.
Yep.
And then, you know, COVID happened and barrels were negative, like $48 a barrel.
Yeah.
And you know, companies that were multi-million-dollar companies, you know, were bankrupt
Yeah.
at that point because of the price of barrel had gone down so much.
yeah,
So the price is,
when you hit around 60, people don't like to drill.
yes,
60
anything.
or below.
It's like in the 80s is the sweet spot, right?
Yeah, sweet
80s,
spot. Yeah.
Yeah.
80s is the sweet spot, and it's really better. What people don't realize is that when you're paying a little bit more extra for gas, it's better for the economy as a whole.
Yeah.
And a lot of, you know, and so that's what I'm like, I try not to complain, you know, when I'm spending a little bit more at the gas pump.
When you say a little bit more, are you like talking about where we're at now? Or are you
Yeah.
talking about like where we're up at like $4 a gallon?
Yeah,
About
like,
And sorry, in California it was like 9. I'm talking
Yeah.
about Texas prices.
yeah, Texas.
right around where we're at now.
Yeah, so like,
Okay, that's what I was
The
figuring.
heavy
Yeah.
medium. Yeah.
have it at a happy median where, you know, you're not like, oh my gosh, I can't,
Right.
you know, drive to the grocery store because gas is so that's what we were talking about, longevity. It's just kind of keeping it at that happy medium where, you know, prices are now, where they're affordable, but they're a little bit higher, because then everything relies on gas,
Yeah.
transportation, Amazon deliveries, you know, everything.
Petroleum
Everything.
and
But it also does affect in the community the grocery prices.
The waitresses, like, if you're, you know, making money in oil, then you're able to tip someone, and then that waitress is able to go buy her kids clothing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So oil really does affect the whole community
Yeah.
and the,
Yeah.
you know, in the entire world, really.
Well, you can see that if we can get some steadiness in it. But if as you're driving out to West Texas, you can see where the peaks and valleys have impacted communities around here.
Yeah.
Because some of them look like ghost towns. And you can tell at one point in time, which was probably when we had some type of boom going on, all these buildings went up, all this stuff started happening, all this commerce started taking place. And then when it goes down, it evaporates.
Yep.
And so you know, if you can keep it steady like you're talking about, then you can actually start building. You can't build on a roller coaster.
No, build on a foundation.
That's what's really hard, but a lot of companies have actually learned, especially with the COVID, you know, slope that was horrible for many companies. A lot of companies have learned now too, when they are steady, they're not going to be throwing, you know, so much money at their clients and their employees.
Yeah, that's definitely changed.
It's changed a lot. So now they're holding on to that fund. So when there is a drop, you can still stay steady and, you know, pay your bills and stay in business, because we know there's going to be highs and lows.
Well, yeah,
that is the oil.
I was going to ask you about the COVID piece and how that impacted stuff, because I know I've heard stories like, some of the booms, it's like these guys are coming out and the man camps are a lot nicer. They're feeding these guys filet mignon, you know. And then there's other times where it's like they're starving, basically.
Exactly.
So what was how did COVID impact all this? Like pre-post?
For one, on the employee side, you had a lot of older cats with a lot of knowledge that were done with the ups and downs. That was their last rodeo.
Okay.
So you lose a whole generation there of knowledge and experience, right? So they go to do other things. They either retire or go to do other things.
Okay.
And then you have a whole new generation like that is almost entitled and everything else. And now you got COVID happening. So now you have to entice them with something to get them out of the house to come work.
Yeah, because the oil companies don't care. They got to keep pumping.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and that's an interesting.
So the man camps change a little bit. The gyms now are important. You know, morale is important. Gym, food,
right,
and location and everything else.
Gotcha. And so the goal being now, at least for some of these companies, is how do we keep this thing a little more steady, so that we're not like having this crazy chaos.
Different playing field.
Yeah, everyone, it's opened everyone's eyes. You know how overnight, literally, oil can be in the 80s.
I was actually on location when oil hit negative.
Yeah.
I believe it was negative for an amount of time, but I was actually on location while they were they were shutting in all wells.
Yeah, well, it's like, what happens, man? They start turning them off?
They just started shutting them in.
Yeah. Because they're like, we're not pumping because no money.
I mean, you can't. Well, I mean, if your oil's negative and you're paying someone to be out there, you're double negative.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you're losing your ass
so
right and left.
Shutting in, everybody's chaos. You know, where am I going? Who knows what's going on?
When was that?
2020.
So that's when so we're negative in 2020.
Like February or something.
Right when COVID hit.
Yeah. I think
beginning of it.
March, April.
It was like February.
That's an interesting.
Yeah.
That's an interesting. I didn't know it was right then. So when that happens, do we just import all our oil at that point in time? Is that what happens?
So we have reserve.
Yeah.
We have oil on reserve. Right?
Okay. So they just use reserves.
So do a little bit of both. Use reserves, import.
Yeah.
But it's bad for the economy, obviously, because everything that this does. So I mean, that's one of the things I was excited about with, you know, and people can talk about who they prefer in office or whatever it is, and it is what it is. But I was positive about the change that we're having just with the direction of what they were going to be doing with the oil industry from a standpoint of how that affects the United States economy, right? Like
100%.
And what it does for us as a nation. So it's cool you guys get to be a part of that and your business gets to grow with that. So
absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
The convention gave us a lot to think about, so we snagged some lunch and decided to wander around downtown to take it all in.
Hey, so one of the interesting things that we found being here in Midland is the zoning or lack of zoning that there may be here when it comes to where they put things. I guess maybe because they put things up so quickly at one point in time, they didn't care. I don't know, but you literally have like a house next to a convenience store, next to a high rise, next to an empty lot, next to downtown, and there's no like transition of anything. So it's coming from a city, it's a little interesting to look at. Little known fact about Midland is that their nominated color of choice is what we've deemed as power beige. So apparently from the air, I don't think you can see any of the buildings here because it's the same color as the dirt, but everything's a power beige color.
The downtown area feels like it pops up in the middle of a small neighborhood with no warning, and then disappears just as fast. For a city that has made so many so fabulously wealthy and is the powerhouse of the oil production in the U.S., it's interesting that it's so small and underwhelming compared to, say, Dallas or Houston. And I'm not saying that to offend the people of Midland, but rather as an ironic observation. It's as though the money shoots through the pipeline out of Midland as quick as the oil does. But through its flaws, it's a pretty incredible sight to see and take in. At the end of the day, it's a piece of Texas unlike any other.
If you like this episode, please give it a like, a share, and we'd love for you to subscribe and be a follower to our channel. Until next time, adios. How the hell do I get out of here?